But with that being said, let's go here. The Phoenix Suns are gone streaking. It is their longest win streak since early in the season when they started off the season. I believe it was 8-1, which feels like a lifetime ago. And I don't like to react to things that I see on social media all the time, but sometimes it's just so freaking hard. Because you see what the Suns are doing, and it is impressive, and it is fun to watch, and it is nice to see that there's some fight in this team. But what gets a little frustrating is changing the narrative of the season. And it goes to the Kevin Durant, Devin Booker pairing, and what should they do with it? And just because the Suns have won 3 games, that's what it is, right? It brings out the insane fandom of some, again, fans. Sorry about that. But you see what the Suns are doing. 3 straight wins. Wins against the lowly Raptors and the lowly Bulls. And then, of course, a really good Cavaliers team who is skidding a little bit here. 4 straight losses. I'm not sure if they played last night, but before that, 4 straight losses. So then you ask yourself, what is this team capable of? And should it change the trajectory of the offseason? Now, listen, I will agree with it as much as everyone else that the Suns built this roster wrong. But what I won't do is act like it's not Devin Booker and Kevin Durant's fault at least a little bit. For everyone that gets frustrated about the DeAndre Ayton trade, that was approved and pushed through by Booker and Kevin Durant, who were done with DeAndre Ayton. And they pushed him out the door. And I largely agreed with it because Ayton had run his course. And he's timid and he frustrates other people outside of those two. And look at the Portland Trail Blazers. They went and drafted his backup. They went and drafted his replacement this year in Donovan Clingan. They're done with him too. I remember there was a story last year where DeAndre Ayton couldn't make it to the stadium because there was too much snow outside. And you just think to yourself, that is a classic DeAndre Ayton story. It just is. And now the Trailblazers don't want anything to do with him. So I won't act like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant didn't play a large role in moving that guy out. That was largely reported that both of them were done with DeAndre Ayton. And then you go to the Bradley Beal side of things. Well, what was largely reported? Devin Booker and Kevin Durant recruited Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. And I won't act like I wasn't okay with it. I wanted Bradley Beal here. And now that the Suns have won a couple extra games, people are like, now we know what they need to do. Build around Booker, build around KD, trade Bradley Beal. Okay. Much easier said than done. But let me just enlighten you a little bit. The Suns have been trying to trade Bradley Beal for, 6 months now. They tried to move on from him already. It's an immovable contract. And the only way you're going to move on from Beal is if you give someone a bunch of things to take on that contract. And that might be worth it to you. But to think that you're going to be able to improve this roster at least even a little bit, it's just not going to happen. And so you see what Booker and Beal and KD have done, and it's largely nothing. This is as much the front office fault as it is the players' fault. Now, I'm done acting like it's not. They didn't want DeAndre Ayton here. That was wildly reported. And they recruited Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. Not to mention, they also recruited Tyus Jones to the Suns, and that hasn't worked out either. Maybe we'll go ahead and say that those two players don't have a career as a general manager. Now, listen, if the Suns find a way to turn the season around, and they end up making a Western Conference Finals appearance, or God only knows, they make it to the finals, sure. But this idea that you're going to be able to just build around these two is just so far-fetched. It's not happening. Because you have to move on from Beal, and the only way you're going to do that is if you make it someone's worth their while to take him. It's going to be numerous first-round picks to get off of him, and by the time you move him, you have nothing left. The only way to move on to the next chapter of the next great Phoenix Suns team is, unfortunately, trading Kevin Durant. Or you're going to hold on to him for too long, and you're going to have to end up trading both guys, and that being KD and Devin Booker. That's not something I'm rooting for, but this team has run its course. And it's fun now that this team is starting to win a couple of meaningful games. But I think an easy way to earn retweets on social media is just to say cut Bradley Beal, but no one ever says how they're going to do it. Because it's an impossible task. Trading Bradley Beal is not going to happen because no one wants anything to do with that contract. They've already tried trading him during the deadline. No one wanted him. You would have to give someone an immense amount of picks or players to take him on. Because no one's just going to take that guy and that contract off your hands. So as much fun as the last couple of games have been, the failure of the season and roster construction falls just as much on the front office as it does the players. The players wanted DeAndre Ayton gone. He's gone. They took a loss on a trade. That trade obviously wasn't very good. Toumani Camara is the best player in that deal. But you even move on from that even furthermore. And you see the additions, or you see the addition of Bradley Beal. That was Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. They recruited him to this team. They recruited Tyus Jones. Those two guys do not have a career clearly as a general manager. And you shouldn't change the trajectory of the season just because you feel like this team needs to change and move around the roster, because it's not going to happen. But I will say this. This is how the Suns are going to win games, and multiple games. This is how the Suns are going to stay competitive. And what I will even say even furthermore is, when Bradley Beal comes back, it sounds like an impossible task to put him on ice. That might cause more problems than it's worth. But there is absolutely no world where Bradley Beal should be starting on this team. He has to go back, or I guess I should say, he has to be a 15 to 20 minute guy. And if he wants to play a vital role on this team, somehow salvaging the season, he has to do all the gritty stuff, all the glue guy stuff. He has to be diving on the floor for balls, play stifling defense, hit an occasional open three. But what is not asked of Bradley Beal anymore is to be a bucket getter. We've seen what that looks like. It's too redundant, and it doesn't work on the Suns' offense. But here's the problem. I worry about Bradley Beal getting benched for Colin Gillespie. Because it's one thing to put Bradley Beal in trade conversations. It's another thing to bench him behind a third-year vet. Or I guess I should say, it's one thing to set him behind a third-year player who hasn't found his spot in the NBA yet up until this point. I think that could cause even worse problems. But what we've seen is, whether it's his fault or not, this team's just better without Bradley Beal. And Budenholzer, if he just inserts Bradley Beal into the starting lineup, would be a fireable offense. We've seen what this team looks like with Beal this year. It ain't good enough. And we've seen what it looks like with just Booker and KD. And the numbers are stifling, are eye-opening. This team's better without Beal in the lineup. And that's what it has to be. No more Bradley Beal, no more nonsense in this lineup. It's not working out. So those three guys, so Booker and KD, that works. Adding Beal to that doesn't. And so at this point, Beal can come back if he's willing to take a limited bench role, which is when KD and Booker aren't on the floor, sure, hit some shots, but mostly be a glue guy. But I have my doubts that he'd be able to do that and even want to do that. So with that being said, the Suns are in a tough situation because we see what they can do when everything is clicking, and that's beat up on teams like the Cavs. But the problem is they're hardly ever clicking.